putting something like this in a radio station, they're reasonably junior people. They'd be so excited they'd be telling everybody, wouldn't they?
No, I don't think that. Look, our people are very well trained.
Well, they weren't here.
Well, you know, I think, Neil, as I said, I think this is a deeply tragic, unforeseen circumstance. It's not right to say that this style of prank call isn't commonplace in radio around the world.
Do you normally, when you do a prank call, check with the people who've been pranked to see would they approve it going to air?
We have various procedures in place, Neil, and it depends on when and where and what. So there are various rules that we have in place around that, and the presenters in this case followed those rules.
So, but it wasn't checked with the people who were pranked to see if they objected, was it?
It is absolutely true to say that we actually did attempt to contact those people on multiple occasions.
Really, to get approval?
We rang them up to discuss what we had recorded
before it went to air.
Absolutely, we couldn't. We tried. We attempted to contact them on no less than 5 occasions.
Why?
Because we did want to speak to them about it.
So did you have some reservations at some level somewhere about putting it to air?
Oh, Neil, look, I think that that's a process that we follow, and we have checks and balances on all these things. I think we need to understand, and this is a tragic circumstance. This wasn't foreseeable.
Oh, of course, I agree with you entirely.
I don't think anyone reasonably could think that it wasn't foreseeable. I mean, we're deeply saddened by the events.
Oh, look, I agree with you entirely. I guess the point I'm getting, these two are pretty junior, pretty inexperienced people. At the moment, they're wearing all the blame. It strikes me that if there is...
I think that's right, Neil, and I'm here to try and say that they did what they were supposed to do.
So if the system failed, it failed within the bureaucracy at another level?
Well, again, I can only say, Neil, that no one could have foreseen the circumstances that transpired.
Do you consider you're covered by the codes? Well, you do. You're covered by the codes of practice, the ACMA codes of practice.
Well, we all are, Neil.
Yeah, of course we are.
We all are.
Do you feel that you've breached them? Perhaps Code of Practice 9?
Oh, look, I don't believe that we have breached any codes, but I don't want to have an open debate with you about those things. These are, the codes are very detailed, and you would know them, and certainly we know them, and certainly, these are very detailed sets of rules, and there's lots of them, and we have people who are trained in those rules.
They're pretty simple. I mean, if you look at 9.3, the participant consents prior to the broadcast of the relevant content.
Look, Neil, again, I will say we do not believe that that's the case, but I mean, that's what you're saying.
No, but can you explain?
I think, Neil, we need to understand, in one, no one could reasonably have foreseen this. I think the second point to make is, and this is an incredible tragedy. I mean,
I agree.
There's no getting away from that. We're incredibly saddened by the events that have happened.
Could I just ask?
We've also said, Neil, I think it's important to make the point that anyone who conducts any investigation, of course, we're very happy to discuss it with them. I don't think it's instructive for me to be doing that in public forums. I'm very happy to do that with people who ask us questions, and I'm sure that in the time ahead, there will be questions, and we're happy to participate in that process. Of course, we are.
Could I just ask you one thing on the codes? Do you consider that live entertainment is covered by a different area to interviews and talkback?
Neil, I think that I'm not going to get into debate about. I don't think that's. I think that we need to understand a couple of things. One, no one could have seen the circumstances of the event that transpired. Secondly, this is a tragic event. We are deeply saddened by what has happened. The show has been taken. We have taken the necessary steps. We have said that we won't be running that style of call until we do. We've said that we will start an internal review of our own systems, and I think that that's an appropriate thing at this point.
Okay, well, but the show's off air, but we seem to have agreed earlier that the responsibility lies elsewhere. Has anybody else been disciplined at this stage?
Neil, I don't think that I want to discuss what our internal review is doing. But, I think that's an appropriate thing for us to do, and we're happy to cooperate with the relevant authorities to do that. But, this isn't a witch hunt, and I don't intend for it to be that way.
Okay. Have you spoken to the police yet in either Australia or England?
No one's spoken to us, and we haven't at this point in time, no.
Do you think the British police are being, the British media rather, is being too tough on you?
Oh, look, I think that this is a tragic circumstance, and Neil, there's been a lot said about this issue, and I think we should just remember it's just a deeply, deeply tragic event that no one could have foreseen.
I agree.
There's emotion is running high on the issue, and we are deeply saddened by all of this, and we're just trying our best to.
Look, I agree entirely that it's
a very
awful.
difficult circumstance. Yep.
Do you have any legal advice as to whether you might have breached the Surveillance Act?
Neil, that's not a discussion that I think is appropriate for me to be having. I mean, we could not have reasonably foreseen what had happened. These calls are commonplace, and I can only say no one could have seen the tragic events that transpired, Neil.
They are commonplace, but it's also commonplace, as you've said, to sort of check back and make sure that the victim of the prank doesn't object, isn't it?
Neil, all sorts of checks and balances we have in place.
Did they fail?
I think that we've got checks and balances in place. I think when you look at it, no one could reasonably have seen the results that have happened in the last 2 days.
What is this costing 2DayFM?
I'm not in a position to discuss what it may or may not be costing. I mean, and to be fair, it would be reckless of me to be discussing that.
Fair enough.
I think it's a very fluid situation.
Do you think there's a threat to your licence here?
No, I don't believe there is.
Is there a cultural issue here? I mean, we've had several transgressions from Caall Sandilands. Here we have another bad one. Is it possible that you've got a cultural problem within 2DayFM if you haven't learnt from the Caall Sandilands problems?
No, Neil. I think you're joining a couple of issues here inappropriately. Again, I can only say that the prank call, is not unusual in radio around the world. That style of call. It happens every day in radio around the world. Now, no one could reasonably foresee what had happened. I don't believe that there's a cultural issue within 2DayFM. I think if you look at any broadcasting business and try and squash years and years and years and hours of broadcasting down to 3 minutes, you can paint any picture you want. We do a tremendous amount of good things in the community, and you could equally put those together and say that we're a great broadcasting company. I don't accept that that's the case, that we have a cultural issue.
Look, you're right that the prank calls are a tradition, have been for a long time, but so is consent. And I keep coming back to the...
Look, doesn't mean, Neil, that we shouldn't review where we are, and we've said that we will review where we are, and we think that that's an appropriate thing to be doing, and we'll do it.
Will it change 2DayFM at all this?
Oh, look, I think that we will review what we're doing, and I think that if it's appropriate to make changes, we will make them. Make no mistake about that.
Look, what you've said repeatedly is quite right. It's a tragedy, it's an awful thing that's happened, and nobody ever intended it. But do you think the royal families owed an apology here as well for what was an intrusion on their privacy? I mean, I wouldn't like anybody ringing up on radio getting a condition of my wife or family out of hospital, would you?
Look, I think that the main issue here again is around the tragedy that couldn't have been reasonably foreseen. I think that the day prior, people took it as being a harmless prank in good humour. If anyone could have foreseen the circumstances, I don't think anyone could have.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Neil.
Rhys Holleran, Chief Executive of Austereo. Southern Cross Austereo, to give it its full name. Well, what do you reckon, Michael? Hello.
Hi, Neil. I listened to it. I mean, you've been a broadcaster for a long time. I was a little bit disappointed with just a question that I really thought you needed to ask.
Yeah.
And the question was, like I would have asked that person, did you think you contributed to the lady's death? And there's no grey area there. They did. They contributed to it. It's like a drug deal.
Mark, just take us through the Austereo response to that London hospital.
Yeah, that's right, Amelia. The hospital wrote to Austereo yesterday with a pretty strong letter condemning the prank as being appalling. Now, last night, Austereo responded to the hospital. It sent a letter. What's interesting about this letter is that Austereo is not apologising for what has happened. The letter was sort of couched in a lot of legalese. It said the events were unforeseeable and regrettable. That's about as strongest as they went. The representative from Austereo did make a comment on the web, and here's what he's here to say.
They're both understandably incredibly distraught too, and we're concerned for both their well-being, and at this point we've asked them to make no comment.
Well, the two DJs have been keeping a low profile all weekend.